Hey, this is Aaron Amuchastegui, and I am back as today's host of the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. You know, if you're a listener and you've only been around for the last 6, 7, or 8 months, then you are used to hearing Shelby's voice on here. But believe it or not, long before Shelby, I was the podcast host for many, many years. I had a lot of things that happened about 18 months ago, and she was one of the people that stepped up to help do interviews for me to keep the show rolling while I had other stuff going on. She has now moved back into kind of full-time agency as an active agent. And so now I am back as the host. You know, for my first one back, I'm really excited for you guys to hear the interview that I just did with Emily Terrell. She's one of Tom Ferry coaches. She's an agent with EXP. She's from San Antonio, Texas. And we talked about all sorts of things about, you know, best scripts when calling expireds, because that's where they get so much of their business, how they get 99% of their business volume is just from listings alone. So all those stresses about commission changes and things like that, they are getting around that by just being a listing agent. So I think you guys are going to learn a lot about how to get deals, how to follow up with deals, and how to really improve your overall business. So here you go for today's episode of the Real Estate Rockstars. This is Aaron Amuchastegui, and here's my interview with Emily Terrell. Emily Terrell, thanks for joining us. Where are you calling in from? Where do I have you?
I'm actually in San Antonio, Texas. So down south where it's really hot right now.
Yeah, I live in Austin. So it's funny. Do you feel like we survived the summer though? It's like 90 degrees this week and it's going to be 70 degrees in the morning.
Nope. You know, it's the false fall. It's that that time where, you know, Texas is like, hey, I'm just going to sprinkle that little bit of fall for you. And just kidding, I'm going to have you wearing shorts at Christmas and Thanksgiving still. So I don't think we're there yet. This is not the survive. This is the tease of a little bit of fall.
This is the tease that it's on the edge. How long have you been an agent?
So I got my license in 2015.
Cool. What made you get into real estate?
So realistically, in 2014, 15, I decided to become a stay-at-home mom. I'd actually worked in a marketing department before that where I made the phone ring for you. So, you know, when people call and they're like, hey, do you need to talk about your car's extended auto warranty? I made the phone ring. I made it to where you actually called into us. And I did that for a long time and it was a lot of fun, but I had my first kid and I wanted to spend time with him. I did for about 6 months. And then I realized that I wasn't actually very good at it. I had that guilt, you know, that mom guilt. Yeah. Where even though my husband was 100% okay, we were doing fine financially, I felt guilty that I wasn't contributing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get my license. It was easy. We sold our house that one time. It was so smooth. It was easy. I'm going to go ahead and just get my license and I can do it. If anybody can do it, I can do it. So I kind of jumped into it that way. Little did I know it was a lot harder than I thought. But obviously I've been doing it almost a decade now. So I've definitely survived.
Yeah. Yeah, so many people jump into real estate because of that story, right? Because it's easy, because it's like, hey, they see how much an agent gets paid on those closing statements afterward, and they go, wow, I can do that. And some people can, and there are parts of it. There are parts of it in some transactions that people get to feel like, wow, I didn't do very much, and I sure got paid. But the reality is the amount of time that goes into those multiple leads, those multiple people. Like this client might have been great and easy, but it might have taken 50 bad clients to get there.
Yep. So yeah.
So what was your first year like? So 2015, you get licensed. The in Texas market is kind of pretty stable at that time. It's not really booming, but stuff is months of inventory a little bit lower than now. Rates are probably about like they are now.
Yeah. Actually, I had a really good first year. I can talk to almost anyone. And that was the biggest thing for me. I just started talking to people. I also, at the time, the broker I was with encouraged me to get with Zillow. Now, I'm going to preface this. Zillow then and Zillow now are two different things.
So what was Zillow then?
So Zillow then was $400 a month that I then split with a lender. And I think I got 4 or 5 leads a month.
Yeah. So those were buyer leads, like they would call on a listing and say they wanted to get information about it?
Actually, they would just call and say, I'm going to go see a house. And you would say, okay, I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Like that's how it was. So it was significantly cheaper. Leads were faster. So it was an immediate turnaround. I also did it here outside of in the rural area of San Antonio. So my focus was speed to lead. So because of that, I was actually able to close 36 transactions in my very first year, because I got my license at the end of 2015. So my very first 12 months of 2016, I was able to close 36 transactions, and most of it had to do with speed to lead. I did have some referrals and stuff like that from my sphere of influence, but most of it was that just being available and being the first one to show up and actually show up and talk to people. I think I wrote like 5 or 6 offers in the house, the one house that I showed at the table. Like at the dining room table, I busted out my computer and I'm writing an offer that we then get signed and sent right there in the house that we're writing an offer on, just because it was a lot quicker. So it was cheaper and it was a lot quicker. But also the thing, and I didn't realize this now, but how many transactions did I miss? I did 36, but could I have done 70? Because of the times that I showed people the one time and then I never followed up.
Yeah.
I was showing so many houses that I didn't ever follow up for anything. And so that realization, it didn't hit me right away. It hit me a couple of years later. But now that I understand that long-term follow-up is a huge deal and something that is really important to me now as an agent.
So you had a really good first year. It kind of reminds me, I remember we've had some new agents that we've brought on for some of our developments. And, one of the first open houses one of them held, someone came in, wrote an offer on the house at the open house, and they got to be the buyer's agent on someone else's listing. And it gave them almost like this unrealistic expectation of what it takes to get a deal. So then there were hundreds of open house leads after that could have been really, really good leads. But because they didn't turn over at the beginning, it was like missed opportunity, missed transaction. So let's talk about the ones that you did get. So if you're getting 5-6 Zillow leads a year or a month, so you're getting like maybe 60, 70 a year, of those 36, you said some of them were referrals, but let's say anywhere between 20 and 30 were from Zillow. So you're answering the call, and so for anyone out there that is paying for leads and these leads are coming in, like what advice would you give them? You already started with speed to lead. Like these people are usually shopping for multiple people, and so you want to be sure to reach out to them. What else about your practice helped you, get the most out of those leads?
Well, we'll talk about what I did then and what I really recommend you do now, because those are two different things.
Cool.
So back then it was speed to lead. That was important. And actually an article just came out the other day that said that 40% of online inquiries are never responded to.
Yeah.
And that's a huge number. Now, I was significantly more than that, because every single time the phone rang, I immediately was answering it. I was immediately responding. I was immediately texting. I was reaching out. Now, the thing that I would recommend besides that, because we are in a little bit of a different market, it's a different time. We've got NAR rules that are in effect that change that. However, now though, the game is long-term follow-up. So not only do I still focus on, getting in front of them and being that person that's available right at that moment, I also focus on long-term follow-up. So now every single lead that comes in goes into my CRM. And every single lead is immediately put on, we're going to call it a drip campaign, but it's really a task reminder campaign. So it's just a reminder plan that reminds me to follow up with everyone. Because in reality, I think for Zillow and Realtor.com, the lead time is 18 months. So I'm looking to follow up with everyone that comes into my CRM for at least 2 years. And I'm going to follow up with a combination of emails, text messages, phone calls. I also try to push them into my social media. So Instagram, Facebook, and the reason I love Instagram and Facebook is because it's the marketing that people give you permission for. Mm-hmm. Right? Because think about it, like people are going to unsubscribe for your emails. You send them too many emails, they're going to unsubscribe. They're done, right? They don't want that. They think they're being bombarded. But they will go to your Facebook or your Instagram and they will doom scroll on your profile and look back at years. And you can tell because all of a sudden you'll get a like on something that's like 2 years old where they accidentally hit it. So they'll doom scroll, right? Or they'll watch you send out videos. Because imagine this, if you sent out 5 emails a day telling people what you were doing, they would unsubscribe by the second one.
Yeah.
But you can put up 5 stories in a day and people are going to be sitting there watching it and they're going to go rewatch it. And then they're going to ask you about it. So a big part of pushing people is, when we go to long-term follow-up, back to that, we do emails, text messages, phone calls, and then getting them over to social. Because like I said, it's the marketing that someone chooses to be a part of. So I make sure that everybody that I come in contact with goes to my Instagram, goes to my Facebook. I follow them to try and create a bigger connection than just the initial, hi, my name is Emily.
So what CRM do you use?
I use Follow Up Boss, and I like Follow Up Boss because I can create smart lists. So for example, if I haven't sent an email to someone in the last 30 days, then I can put them on a list and I can make sure that I am following up with them. Or like my past clients or sphere of influence, I can go in and I can tell it, hey, if I haven't called or texted these people, these past client tags in the last 90 days, put them on this list. And this way I go in every day and I'm like, oh, I need to reach out to Susan. So I can do one of two things. I can either connect through Follow Up Boss, or I can go over to social media and I can send Susan a DM, or I can just text Susan, or I can just reach out for whatever reason and then go ahead and mark it that I did that there within Follow Up Boss. And so it'll take her off the list. This way I don't forget, because anybody, and this is just my belief, but anybody that says that, oh, I remember everybody that I talked to, I remember, I'm connecting with all my clients, I'm remembering it up here. They don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, not as those clients grow.
You can't run your entire business in your head.
A lot of new agents, they hear about sphere of influence, right? And they hear about the sphere of influence. It's like, hey, you have to make sure people know. And you got a lot of deals your first year from sphere of influence. But what do you think the best way is to tell your sphere of influence? Because so many people become agents, but they also don't want to have like agent breath, right? And so they have this weird balance. There's a gal that's an agent. Her like TikTok is blowing up right now. And I told her, hey, you need to tell people more often that you're an agent, right? And she's like, how? Like, how do I actually like tell the people that are paying attention without it coming off as salesy? So what advice do you have for people that they're new, they've got this contact list, but they don't know how to do that first outreach of like, hey, think about me when you're going to buy or sell a house?
I literally just said that. I went onto social media and said, I got my license. I'm an agent now. Think about me when you need to buy or sell. And it got a huge response. I'm a big fan of being upfront. Mm-hmm. So I did that. I was very specific and I created a post. And I actually remember I did it while I was in the drive-through of a Taco Cabana, which there are taco places here. I don't know why, but I can remember weird things. Can't remember all my clients, but I can remember that. But I remember posting it, and I think I did it when I went to go order. And by the time I got my food, I had about 12 comments already of people telling me congratulations, and not agent comments, like my actual people, my friends, my family, sphere of influence, telling me congratulations, tagging other people, telling them to make sure they remember me, and different comments like that. It was really people getting behind me and telling me congratulations. The other thing that was pivotal for me in changing how people saw me as an agent is I started to show them that I'm knowledgeable. I'm a fun person. I have a bubbly personality, we'll say. So it's really easy to feel me as being flighty or young. I was younger at the time, not so young now, but I was younger at the time. So it's really easy to, kind of pigeonhole someone into that. So what I did is I just became knowledgeable, and I started connecting my content for, personal stuff, but also just real estate content. And I started doing, keep in mind, videos were not as big. Back then it was Facebook Live.
Yeah.
So I would do Facebook Live and I would tell fun stories of me selling real estate. So this way people were still a little bit entertained, but they were also seeing what I was doing. And they also remembered, oh yeah, she sells real estate.
Yeah.
So I would combine that. Now today, how I would do it a little bit differently is I would do more reels, and I would do more of the talking head style videos where I'm providing people with information. Because what I've learned is this: people don't want to be educated. They want to be informed. So I'll find information to inform them. Like, for example, I live in San Antonio, but I live in the outskirts in a tiny, tiny little town of like 1,200 people. Hence the reason I don't say I'm from this town, because there's only 1,200 people here. Nobody's moving here. But I think we have 18 transactions a year in this little town.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's real tiny. It's why I go everywhere else. But in this town, they're actually building a brand new subdivision of 50 homes, which is a lot of homes for this town. So they're building 50 homes that are probably going to be 750 plus. So higher price point for San Antonio in the surrounding areas. 50 homes, they're all going to be on 2.5 acres. So of course, you've got to bet that I've already scheduled interviews for myself and my team to go and talk to the new construction, the builder, right? The guy that's developing it, so we can get his vision for this subdivision. And you can bet that we're already going through and kind of teasing out building plans and stuff like that, things that they're allowing us to give people so they can be informed of what's happening. This way, if there's anybody looking in this area and that wants to be in this school district, they want to be more in the country and have acreage, even though, I'm from the country and I don't consider 2.5 acres acreage, but anybody living in the city, that's a lot, right? So anybody that wants that type of life and lifestyle, they're already going to be aware that it's out here. So then we'll have people that reach out and they go, wait, where is that? We want that.
Yeah.
So we're informing.
So right now, what's your team look like now? So you've been an agent for 10 years and so you started as like getting leads and like a solo agent learning. And now you've got a team. What's your team layout like?
So I do a lot of other things. I have investment properties. I love to spend time with my kids. So my team is really small. I have one partner that oversees the rest of the transactions. I actually do lead gen and follow up. That's my role. And then I'm the come in if there's a problem person. Mm-hmm. If there, I'm really great at thinking outside of the box. So I come in if there's a problem. And then we have one buyer's agent and 2 showing agents. And then we have one admin. Yeah, I think about that. And one admin that does transactions.
So where do you guys get your leads now? Or how do they generate deals now?
So I have a couple different things. So SOI will always be a massive source for us. Expireds, because believe it or not, in San Antonio, we have a huge amount of expireds and canceleds that are on the market.
Tons
so we
right
do
now.
that. And keep in mind, this one changes though. I don't always have expireds. Right now we do, but we don't always. Then we do investors. So I've worked with investors for probably the last 8 years. So I continue to follow up with investors that I've worked with in the past and also new ones. So we got SOI, investors, expireds, and then past clients, which are different than your SOI. So past clients, those are going to be the 4 primary things. Now I do a lot of social media, but notice I didn't mention that one because my past clients, SOI, investors, and expireds, they all get my social media and I do it for them. I do it for a long-term follow-up. Again, remember I mentioned it's the marketing that they don't choose to be a part of. So I actually include that social media concept is part of all of that. It's a supporting part of all of those lead generation sources.
Yeah. So with the leads now, it's similar. So when you're calling expireds though, like you said, like back in 2020, there weren't expireds, right? There's different game plans. And that's why I did want to get into today and how we're doing deals today, because business today is much different than a year ago and 10 times different than 4 years ago. And there's some agents that just got started in the last few years. Right. So if you are going to call expireds, and so right now it's one of the best opportunities out there because no matter where you are in the US, months of inventory is so much higher and an agent has failed before, or not even necessarily an agent has failed, but a house has been listed that hasn't sold for a various number of reasons. So what do you do when you call that expired? What's that conversation like? What do you teach your team? What do you say on the phone?
Sure. So I'm a big fan of being upfront. So we always start with, of course, hi, this is Emily Terrell, and we give that. But we always start with, are you interviewing agents to relist your home? It is the number one best response because people either say yes or no. Most of the time it's yes. And then we can have a conversation about, okay, are you interviewing agents? Okay, great. Well, let's talk about it. And a lot of times people didn't even think about the fact that they should interview agents. It stops them from going, oh no, I'm just listing with my same agent again. But and then it's different from the typical, are you accepting offers? I've got a buyer. Can I come preview your house? It's different than those scripts. What I don't like about those is they, in my opinion, they start from a place of dishonesty. Unless you've got a buyer that actually wants to see that house, it's not really, I mean, and a lot of people like to justify it and they say, well, there are buyers out there. Well, that is true, but you're not telling them that there's a potential buyer. You're saying, I've got one. So I always like to start with, are you interviewing agents to get your home relisted? And like I said, they either tell me yes or no. And even if they tell me no, the name of the game is long-term follow-up. So we'll get them put into something like HomeBot, or you can use Real Scout, or you can use other tools that are going to do long-term follow-up that are going to provide information. And we just ask them if they want to have that information. And 9 times out of 10, they say yes. So anybody that's answering the phone, responding to our texts or emails are either going to get an interview or they're going to get set up on a long-term follow-up.
So and something you started your career with was speed to lead. So how soon after it expires are you calling that owner?
As soon as I get the information, which is usually the next day.
Yeah. So next day you get a list of expireds. Every MLS out there has one. You can figure out, here's a list of people that expired yesterday. You figure out who the owner is, which sometimes takes a couple extra clicks and some extra software to find it. Sometimes you're going to get the wrong number. You're going to call them, say, hi, I'm Emily Terrell. I saw your house expired yesterday. I was curious if you're interested in interviewing new agents to relist it. They're going to say yes or no. If they say no, you're going to say like, hey, no big deal. Do you have any interest in getting information? I've got this software called HomeBot that can email you every couple of weeks and tell you what your house is worth in case you want to resell it in the future. And it's kind of as simple as that. So you either get them into your sphere that way for the long-term follow-up, or they say yes and they say, yeah, they want to interview.
Yeah. And then you set an interview. I mean, it really is that simple. Now, we don't just call, if you probably didn't figure that out. We also text, same concept. And then we send them emails. So the first day, they're going to get reached out to 3 times.
Cool.
And then after that, usually within the first, because not everybody answers right away. Remember, like the first day, there's probably 100 phone calls that come in, right? They get bombarded.
They'll get
at
a
least
bunch,
100, I feel like. They get 100 phone calls that day. So sometimes we can get lost. But crazy thing is a lot of times I get calls back about a week or 2 later, and they're like, oh my gosh, your text message was just so nice. And all I did was ask them like, hey, are you interviewing agents to get your home relisted? But I was just so nice. I get that all the time, that I was just so nice.
It's probably less aggressive than so many of the things that are out there. It's kind of like writing offers is a numbers game, but in this case, expireds is the same thing. So maybe they got 100 calls, but maybe of those 100 people, 50 of them also sent a text or an email, and maybe only 20 also did a phone call, a text, and an email. So when somebody says, yes, we are interviewing, are you trying to interview right then? Are you doing Zoom? Are you trying to meet them at their house? Like what's your best way to close and get that listing?
We like to do in person. Myself, and I've taught my agents to do really well in person. So, and we focus a lot about, believe it or not, speaking training has helped significantly with building out a really great listing presentation, such as a pleasing tone, but also varying the rate of your speed, the pitch, things like that have really helped. And also the way you tell stories, right? Instead of saying, I'm the one that made the phone ring when somebody called about it. I changed it. If you noticed, I was like, hey, how's your car's extended auto warranty? Doing some of those techniques has actually helped us be better in person and relate to the client, the seller, significantly more. So because of that, we actually try to get in person, and we like to go there prepared. Now, one massive thing that sets us apart from other agents is the fact that every time we go on a listing appointment, we get a listing, we do a contract, everyone gets the exact same experience, right? So for example, back in the day, when I used to drink sweet tea, I loved Raising Cane's sweet tea. I loved it because every single Raising Cane's that I went to, no matter where I went to, it always tastes the same. To the point where if I was thirsty when I was out showing houses or just out, I actually knew where the Raising Cane, all of them were on this side of town I knew where they were because I would drive even 30 minutes out of my way to go and get one before I would make it a point to go and get sweet tea from Raising Cane's. And then sometimes my husband's like, why don't you just buy the jug? So sometimes he would just buy me. That's how much I drank. That's how much I loved it, right? But I did that, and I would drive 30 minutes out of my way because I wanted that sweet tea. I wanted that sweet tea that always tasted the same, which anybody that loves sweet tea as much as I used to understands that not all is the same. But so I would go and drive to all of these different locations, and I knew where they all are because I had that experience, and it was the exact same experience. So that's one big thing that we started doing was we started creating a transaction experience. So as soon as someone like an expired says yes to an appointment, they are put into our management software and they get text messages reminding them of it. They get their client portal set up right away. They start getting that first level of communication. We also prepare everything that we're going to take with us. Like just an example, like we're going to make sure we take one of our seller guides and everything that we're going to take. And it's going to be the exact same experience for every single person. This way, all of our reviews stay consistent. And our reviews don't say, oh, she was nice. Our reviews say, wow, that was a great experience. And so we started creating that, and it really set us apart from, what we're doing as far as, how we're treating our agents or how we're treating our clients. And that's gotten us a lot of repeat and referral business just because they know that they're going to get the same great experience every single time.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges right now with listings is we're in this like brutal buyer's market. And it's not necessarily brutal everywhere, but it's brutal in comparison to, let's say, a few years, 3 out of the last 5 years was a pretty big experience. And so I think a lot of sellers get hung up on one, price, wishing they would have sold in, end of 2021, January 2022 instead of now. And then, so there's a couple things that happen. Sometimes we get sellers that are like really hung up on a certain price, or they're really hung up on this idea of why haven't we gotten anything yet? So how do you combat that? So if you do that listing appointment and you say, hey, I think you should sell your house for $385, and they're like, hey, I really want to sell it for $450 because last year my neighbor sold his for $450. So how do you combat that? And then what else do you maybe do for expectations? So that way, if you have been on the market 60 days and you've only had 2 or 3 showings, that's actually kind of normal right now, unfortunately. And so do you prep them ahead of time? I guess what's your strategy with that whole listing? Get the listing and figure it out later, figure it out now. So when you have the listing, it's a better experience.
So we have the plan. It's always the plan up front. But I always look back at the numbers because the numbers aren't going to lie. So I always prep my clients ahead of time. Because at the end of the day, if somebody wants to list, if I tell them $385 and they want to list at $450, it is their house. And it's not my decision to make. It is their decision to make. But I always come back to them and I say, okay, that's great. And I always tell them, look, I want to sell at that price, but I can only tell you what the market tells me. Now, if I'm wrong and we sell at $450, fantastic. But all I do is continue to provide them with updates. So part of my follow-up process, part of that experience that they get, one of the things that we do on our listing plan is we do weekly calls. So we do a weekly progress check with every single one of our listings. So let's say we get it on the market and we don't have great showings. Every Thursday, we're going to reach out and we're going to provide them with any updated or changed numbers. So if anything has come on the market or anything is closed off the market, so they see a realistic look of what's happening. If something is now hitting, more than 60 days on a days on market, we're going to have that conversation with them to show them, hey, your house has been on the market for 3 days. This house that's bigger and cheaper is now hit 60 days. Do we want to reevaluate? And we may not necessarily have price reduction talks, 3 days in or 7 days in, but we are setting the tone for when we need to. Now, if they don't choose to drop the price, again, that's up to them. But we are going to always provide content. We are always going to provide the numbers to showcase to them. Because the worst thing that I want is I don't want a seller to go, well, you didn't tell me. It's like, oh, hold on. We had this many conversations where I told you every single time, right? Here's where I sent you an email reminding you of what we talked about. And most of the time, I will tell you, it's very rare that I have a seller that is that far off. Maybe 5,000 to 10,000, maybe. One other thing I have also learned, and this is just for me, anytime someone asks me for a list price, and let's say I'm going to recommend 400,000, I say 395. Do you know why? Because every seller says, oh, let's do 400.
Yeah, they're always going to round up.
They always do.
No matter what you tell them, they're going to round up a little bit.
They do. Now, on the rare chance that somebody goes, yeah, 395 sounds good. And you're sitting there going, well, crap. crap, I really meant 400. That's okay. You look at it again and say, I was looking at the comps again right before we listed. I think we can do 400. And then they're going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
But you always, I've just learned that. I always go a little bit lower. Same thing with an offer. If the house is listed at 250,000 and I think they should put in an offer at 250, well, I'll take it back. Let's say it's listed at 250 and I think they should go at 245. I'm going to tell them 250 because they're going to come back and say 245.
Yeah. It's a little bit of client management. It's like this, giving them the info. And so you go to somebody and you go a little bit under because they always want to get a little bit more. When you're like, hey, this should be your listing price. And if you go, hey, you should go 295 and they go 300, you're good. If they say yes to 295, they're always going to be okay with more. Or if they say, no, I want to list it for 350, you're going to say like, okay, that's a lot more than I was ready for. It's your house and I will absolutely honor it. I'm going to do everything I can to sell it for 350, but I wanted to make sure that you had the data to know that if we do sell it for 350, it'll be a record or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the biggest thing is what I've learned is people they're going to do what they want to do. I'm not going to talk someone into buying or selling. I'm not going to talk someone into selling at a lower price. In fact, if you push too hard with trying to talk someone into doing something they don't want to do, they're going to distrust you, right? Yeah. They're going to automatically go, oh, she's like a used car salesman. I don't want to be that. So
and that guilt comes back.
I provide the information, right? I just provide the information. I show that I know my craft. I know the market. I know the numbers. I'm aware and I'm confident in the price we should get with. And then I have a solid marketing plan and we go from there.
What's something that you wish you would have known that you know now, right? That you wish you would have known when you first got started in real estate? Like what's that one thing you're like, man, I had no idea this was going to be part of the gig.
I really, 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 really wish I would have set my CRM up and used it from day one because it makes, remember we mentioned people don't have, what is it? They don't have a lead problem. They have a follow-up problem.
Yeah.
I was poster child I didn't have a lead problem. I had a follow-up problem. And it's that process. Like I wish I would have actually set up my follow-up like I have it now. I could have, instead of doing, it's my second year, I did like 76 transactions. That could have been 176. Like it could have been insane. Yeah. It could have been so much more if I had just followed up. Because in the beginning, all I did was work the leads that were literally right in front of me. The people that were just raising their hand going, please me, right? Like just use me. Like that was all I focused on instead of everything that I missed and how much better and how much more I could have had by just following up.
Yeah. That's like that's really, really good advice. I remember interviewing a gal that told me something like 30 or 40% of her sales came from, past clients. And her first few years were Zillow leads only. Mm-hmm. Right. And then she did a really good job at like putting them into a CRM. And then, 5 years later, she closes more deals every year than she did her first couple of years in Zillow. And I've also met a bunch of people that for years have just bought leads from somewhere, bought Zillow leads, things like that, did tons of transactions, but the story is a lot like yours, didn't do any follow-up. And now in hindsight, if we said like, hey, get a list of all the people you've ever sold a house to, that's actually daunting. That's actually not really easy. Or all the people that you showed houses to that first year and things like that. So there is, I think one big difference of today compared to, even just 2-3 years ago in real estate also is it used to be, if you got a lead in your CRM, in your follow-up, in your sphere, however, if they started to become a potential client, you were probably going to be, a chance to, I guess, close a deal within like 90 to 180 days. It's pretty reasonable. Like you could meet someone in an open house and actually there's a reasonable expectation within 90 days they could buy a house. Yep. And now it's like those open houses, you're going to have to, instead of getting 10 leads, you're going to get 2 or 3. And instead of them buying a house in 90 days, it's like they might buy one in the next 2 years. Yep. So there's just so much more follow-up needed, so much more effort needed. I've heard it said that like the same tactics work. You just have to work harder than you used to, maybe 2 people from an open house is good, but like that continuous follow-up is different. So you were just on stage at a Big Tom Ferry event.
I was.
What was your shtick? What was your thing that you were on stage talking about?
Well, I was actually answering questions. So I didn't really have one specific thing. I will tell you my favorite thing though, that I got to talk about. So there was, and I don't remember his name, but there was and I'm going to call him a kid because he was 18, right? He had just got his license. He had his license. No, he was 20. I'm so sorry. He was 20 and he'd gotten his license at 19. And he came up and he was like, I've had my license for a year and I've done $2 million in volume. Which is pretty good, right? Pretty good. And he said, but I missed $1 million in volume because of my age. So, the first thing that I gave him as far as advice was, he asked like, how could he not miss? And I said, well, my biggest advice to you is to get confidence, to understand that you're doing really well as an agent and you need to understand the knowledge, understand the process so that you can go in and be confident. Because like I told them, I was like, look, I'm up here on stage and I told you that I'm the best and you believe me, right? You're listening to my advice, right? I didn't prove to you any other way than I told you I'm the best to be up here. So, with him, it's gaining confidence, right? Gaining that confidence, which does take a little bit of time, but there are ways to get that. But the last thing I wanted him to do, and I think this was really important for him, is I asked him how he knew that he lost the business because of his age. Did all of these people, that this $1 million in volume that he lost, did they tell him, you're just too young, I'm not using you? Or did he just assume that? And maybe there's something else within his business that's causing him to lose that volume.
Yeah.
So I think for him, it was kind of eye-opening for him to go, oh crap, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's something else that I'm doing.
Yeah. Maybe I messed up the presentation and I assumed that it was my age and it came off as my experience instead. Yeah. Because
there are young agents that have a great amount of experience that are just, at a younger age that are really great. And then there are agents that started later and just don't really have the experience. And that also comes across. So it's, for him, it was kind of, I think, a little bit eye-opening for him going, oh, well, maybe it is my confidence. Maybe I need to make that better.
It's such a good point too, that when you lose the business, it's really important to try to reach out and ask why and ask for that feedback. And sometimes people won't tell you, sometimes people are afraid to tell you, but if you ask for it, there's a better chance. One of the gals that's a part that comes to our mastermind once a year out here in Austin, she recently did something where she lost a client or she had a prospective listing and she said like, oh, I didn't realize that you went with somebody else. It was kind of like asking for feedback. It was already lost, but hey, and the person was really clear and just said, hey, every time we talked, you mentioned like house hacking instead and the opportunities for that instead. And so you weren't listening to even though I couldn't afford what I wanted to, you were kind of telling me something different. So instead of listening to what I wanted, you kept pushing something down me that that was a solution in your mind, but it instantly wasn't one in mine. And it was really, really telling for her and really helped her on some of her next ones. So getting the feedback for, him assuming one thing, being able to figure out, if you lose a deal, it never hurts. Oh, I don't have the listing anymore. No big deal. Can you tell me, what I could have done better? And sometimes, there's nothing. And sometimes you hear all sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that whole asking the question and learning to shut up.
Yeah. Asking the question and learning. So right now with your team, how much do you guys do in listings compared to representing buyers, representing sellers?
We do 99% listings. We'll take a buyer if it comes. We're not going to turn it away, but we do not focus on marketing towards buyers. We focus primarily on listings. And so because of that, we attract mostly listings.
Yeah. What's a way that you can tailor your social media to focus more on listings?
So we put out a lot of content that's geared towards listings. So, again, remember, we don't do education as much as we just make people aware, right? We provide that awareness. And so we'll do a lot of market updates, a lot of content, but a lot of tips. For example, if I'm going to do a market update, and I can kind of do one. So if I'm going to do a market update, for one, I focus on one thing, right? I don't focus on this many days on market. I don't focus on all these things because a lot of days on market means things to real estate agents. I understand what that means. You understand what that means. Nobody else does, right? The person trying to sell their house is what does this mean? What is average days on market? I don't understand what this means. So I'll focus on one thing. Typically I'll do my example as days on market. So I'll go in and I'll, prep and we'll do a video and be like, hey, Lavernia, did you know that our average days on market right now is 69 days for resale homes? I'm not talking about new construction. I'm talking about resale. So what does that mean? That means if you're trying to sell your house before Christmas, we need to get a move on. You need to call me so we can start getting your house prepared so that we can have 69 days of being on market. And then we can give a 30-day contract and you can be moved out just before Christmas. Yeah. So we'll do that. I'll take whatever the concept is and I'll put it into a very specific and easy to manageable and understand example.
Yeah.
And so we just provide content like that. We provide content that's geared towards sellers. We provide awareness of what's happening on the market in sellers. And then, of course, expireds, obviously, they go right after,
Yeah, definitely. Targeting expireds and getting really good with that kind of pitch and process. Obviously, you're going to get, listings with that. So as a primary listing agent, I wonder if you've seen much of an impact with this or not yet, but we have the big commission stuff, all the commission talks of, the changes that came out of the NAR lawsuit, the requirements now that before you can even show a house, you have to sign an agreement. Zillow is coming out with this new process now with the Zillow lead that you get to sign like a 1 week represent them for free type agreement where where it's like you sign this deal and you go show them the first house, but now you're actually secretly hoping they don't buy the first house because if they do, you're out. And they're trying to attack that. But have you seen any changes yet in the way people reach out to you about your listings and the way you market? Like we're not allowed to say on MLS, this is how much we're paying for a buyer's agent commission anymore. Are sellers saying like, hey, can we pay less now? Do they know? Or any conversations you're having?
I mean, I address that in the listing presentation. What I've done is I always had a section where I talked about commission, but now I've split that. And I have 2 pages. I have commission for listing fees, and then I have a recommended buyer's agent commission. And so I'll go in and have a conversation with them that says like, hey, this is my recommended buyer's agent commission. This is why. Now, of course, obviously 100% they can say no. That is absolutely their choice. It is negotiable, but I do go through and recommend. And it's things like, for example, there's uncertainty and newer agents may have a harder time going to a buyer saying, hey, this house costs $400,000, but you got to pay me now $400,000 plus this. So now instead of agents having to come in and have those conversations, they can just go and say, they can reach out to me. I'll tell them how much it pays. And then they can go, and they can automatically tell their buyers, hey, this house is actually going to pay me. So you don't have to, right? So they can already have those conversations. Plus San Antonio, we're traditionally more of a cash poor city, meaning there are some people, yes, that put a good amount down, but we have a lot of FHA and VA buyers, which means they don't always have cash. So they don't always have the extra funds. They need closing cost coverage. They need all of that to be paid for. They need that lower down payment. So they don't have the extra funds to, on top of that, pay their buyer's agent. So it will reduce the amount of houses that are available to them if somebody's not paying. So I go through and explain all of this information to the seller. And then we have that conversation. I will say I have not, as of yet, and we've been having this conversation since the beginning of August because we wanted to have it a little bit ahead of time. I haven't had anybody that's come back and said no. They just come in and say, yes, I agree with you. Let's go ahead and pay it.
Yeah, it seems like going at it ahead of time is really helpful. We always did that in FHA and VA markets because we would tell people, hey, here's the recommended list price but we would kind of explain at the beginning. We'd say, but this sale is the same, but I should tell you like these 3, comps I'm using are VA closings, which really means they sold for $200,000, but they gave like a 3 or 4% credit. And your choice, you could say no to that, but there's a chance you could net more, but these things present more buyers. And so we think the more buyers we have that can look at your house, the better chance the price, goes up and offsets that. It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. So with your crystal ball, any predictions for what you think the real estate market's going to be doing over the next year?
Honestly, for the next couple of months, it's going to do. So I lived through the actual last election that we had in November. It's going to freak out. That's not political. It's going to freak out.
Yep.
Everybody is going to hold. After that, I'm hoping that doesn't matter again which office you go into. I'm hoping that whoever comes in as the new president lowers it a little bit, the interest rates, so that it'll artificially, they'll hope to boost that economy artificially. The problem with lowering it is, why are we still, what's wrong with our economy still? We still have no inventory. And what's going to happen if we lower interest rates? All these buyers are going to come out, but we're not going to have any more inventory. So if that does happen, I think we're going to move back to that 22, 23 craziness of the market. We might actually get worse because people might flood the market going, oh my God, what happens if it goes back up? So I'm hoping that that's not what happens, but I bet that kind of is what happens a little bit, is that we get that little bit of a lower interest rate because, new president, they always want to try to shake things up. They always want to push for, we'll have a new cabinet, we'll have everybody in there new, maybe, depending on which way everybody votes. But, they always want to shake things up, and a new president, a new person in office means they're going to make changes. Whatever political party it is, that's going to happen. And that will impact how people actually go and how they buy houses, and it will impact how they spend their money.
Yeah.
So I think we're in for a smidge of a rougher time before we actually get into, back to the smooth sailing waters of what we were.
Such a good point of the stagnancy that occurs kind of right around election time. Not only do we have this rate thing that has slowed everybody down to say like, hey, we're just going to sit tight until we know what's going to happen. Even though now rates have just stayed where they're at for a long time. People are like, no, I want to wait to see what's going to happen. I want to see if the Fed lowers before I come in. Now people are waiting for the election. January 2021, we bought so many properties and got phenomenal deals because that was like kind of the last month of people being in this stalemate of unsure about COVID, unsure about new election. It was like this perfect storm. So January 2021 was a time like you could buy houses for such a screaming deal because everybody was worried that maybe they had topped out. And like 10 months later, prices were like 40% more in Texas. Yep. It was incredible.
Yep. The end of 22 and the beginning of 21, I bought 5 rental properties.
Yeah.
So like my lender was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's that time. And so because of that, and then right after that, and San Antonio is a smidge behind always. We're always like a little, like even Austin, right? We're a smidge behind that. Like when that one house, the first one that started it all, the one that went like $200,000 above its list price in Austin, back in 21, San Antonio did that, not to that extent, but we did that like 3 or 4 months later. So we do follow up, and we do follow. We just are always behind, which is, we have a very big military market here. So it's a very level military market, which, when you have people moving in and out every 3 years on a regular basis, it does help. But in saying that, like, that was the last time when it did. And then just because rates were so great, people just bought, and our values went up hundreds of thousands of dollars immediately.
Yeah. We sold a house in Canyon Lake. We got like 50 or 60,000 over asking on it. And that's like a tiny little market outside San Antonio. It's a nice area, but it's like, it's not a flying off the shelves type market. And that was probably a pretty good sign of where it was. Well, Emily, this has been a lot of fun to talk to you, but I want to hear so what's next with you? How can people reach out to you, find out more? If they want more advice about, scripts for expired or things like that, what's the best way they can learn more from you?
So Instagram. So I do actually coach real estate, hence the reason I was answering questions on stage. But I do coach real estate. So if you look at Coach Emily Terrell on Instagram, I put up content all of the time for agents. That's going to be, especially for agents that are wanting to follow me, that's going to be the best place to reach out. I answer questions there all the time. I love to. Plus, I love to put all of my content up there. So when I'm going to go do big speeches or be on stage and stuff like that, I will go to Instagram and invite people to just check out and do like smaller webinars, just small ones, so that I can test out content and I can get feedback. But that also means that everybody gets my content a lot sooner.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. Well, I already went and followed your Instagram before we got started. She does have a ton of content on there, that she's sharing with the journey. Emily, I got to see if maybe I can talk you into coming and joining us for our mastermind in March that we do in Austin. So it'll be the closest one to where you're at since you're down in San Antonio. I didn't even realize you were from there as we were getting ready to sign on today. So everybody find Coach Emily Terrell on Instagram. And any last thoughts, any final advice for agents out there of just some parting wisdom they need to hear?
I love this. This is something I do talk to my coaching clients about on a regular basis. The work that you do today, it doesn't affect you tomorrow. It's going to affect you in 3 months. So make sure you're putting in the work. But that also means that as Christmas is coming up, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but if it comes out around Christmas, if you take time off to spend with your family, you're going to have a really bad Q1. So make sure that you're doing the work today, even if it's just a little bit, so that in 3-4 months from now, you'll see the fruits of that labor.
Yeah. Such great advice. Whatever you do today, you're not going to see the results of that for 3 or 4 months, whether it's good or bad. Good. You could have a lot of bad habits today and you're still making money from good habits you had 3 months ago. Or if you have a lot of good habits today, you can do well in the future. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show. Real Estate Rockstars. Well, this is Aaron Muchastegui. I'm back. I know it's been a while since you guys heard me on the show. I'm excited to be here. As always, thanks for listening.